Tonight, Pepsodent brings to the personnel stationed at Camp Anza at Arlington, California, the Pepsodent Show starring Bob Hope.
How do you do? How do you do, ladies and gentlemen? This is Bob broadcasting from Camp Anza at Riverside, California.
On December 8, 1941, one day after the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor, the United States officially entered World War II. Troops being sent abroad to various war locations disembarked through the San Francisco port of embarkation and later the Los Angeles port of embarkation. Even greater staging capacity for troops and supplies was needed to support both ports. This need was the beginning of Camp Anza.
Camp Anza originated based on the recommendation of Colonel Aird, who was the commanding officer of the Los Angeles port of embarkation. And he searched 4 different areas in Southern California to be a staging area where troops could be housed and prepared for shipping off to the Pacific Theater. In April of 1942, he submitted a report recommending 4 areas, one of which was in Riverside.
Soon after the land purchase, Major Walter A. Johnson, also known as the father of Camp Anza, was placed in charge of transforming the former ranch into a first-class staging camp.
Camp Anza was selected because it was close to rail lines that could ship the troops easily to the port of embarkation in Wilmington, and it was on relatively flat and undeveloped land, so it would be easy for the Army to develop that land quickly for housing up to 20,000 troops at a time.
The camp Major Johnson activated in December 1942 was originally called the Arlington Staging Area. It was renamed Camp Anza in honor of the 17th century Spanish explorer Juan Bautista de Anza, who in 1774 crossed the Santa Ana River close to the camp location during his exploration of inland California. The staging camp officially welcomed Anzites in January 1943.
But I must explain this Camp Anza. When the guys leave their training camps, they accentuate the positive. When they get overseas, they minimize the negative. And this is the mess in between.
After completing basic training, troops were transported by rail to staging camps close to a port of embarkation. Soldiers spent their final 10 days on U.S. soil here before being shipped off to numerous destinations in Asia and Europe. Between 1942 and 1946, Camp Anza saw more than 250,000 soldiers pass through its doors before shipping off to the Los Angeles port of embarkation.
These boys are new arrivals in California, and they're highly trained. One guy saw an orange tree for the first time, and he yelled, "Stand back, men, look at the hand grenades on that booby trap."
At Camp Anza, GIs were busy equipping and training themselves for battle overseas. Many GIs did not know how to swim or board a boat, but they learned at Hole Reservoir. Camp Anza also featured the largest gas mask training facility in the nation. It held 250 people. Soldiers received immunizations, job-specific uniforms and equipment, assistance composing wills, and even training about the customs, culture, and geography of destination countries.
We didn't get our shots first. We got our shots, one in each, a couple of shots in each arm. And then people, some of the guys were fainting, actually fainting, going down. Well, they saw the big needles, and I said, well, there's going to be a square needle over there waiting for you. Anyway, when we got outside, we had, we changed our clothes and everything from civilian to the uniforms. We were all wrinkled and full of tags, green tags, and we tried to look for our friends, and we couldn't find our friends. Everybody looked the same.
Camp Anza wasn't all work. The 8 to 10 days soldiers spent at Camp Anza were filled with activities, sports, and entertainment, which helped build camaraderie and boost morale. The weekly camp newspaper, the Anza Zip, kept soldiers current on the latest camp news, social activities, national sports, and international headlines. Other popular features included the weekly Pinup Girl and the humorous cartoon antics of The Wolf. Camp Anza offered a wide array of sports, including volleyball, basketball, baseball, and bowling. The Camp Anza Zips even won the 9th Service Command Championship in 1944 and 1945, led by star pitcher Bob Beslak. While the camp was segregated and featured separate service clubs, Anza sports teams were integrated.
African American soldiers were kept separate as the military was segregated up until 1948 when Truman did away with segregation in the military. So at Camp Anza there was a separate servicemen's club, and it was called the Colored Servicemen's Club in the jargon of that day.
Hollywood also played an important role at Anza. Numerous stars of the day, including Bob Hope, Jack Benny, Eddie Cantor, Shirley Temple, Orson Welles, Lucille Ball, Tommy Dorsey, Lena Horne, and even the MGM chorus girls entertained the troops at the indoor and outdoor theaters.
Amos and Andy, We saw Amos and Indian, that's one that I remember. And that other bands used to come there. And
the one that impressed me most was Dinah Shore.
Joe Louis did a boxing exhibition out behind the camp gymnasium for which all camp personnel were invited to come and watch Joe Louis do an exhibition.
Some Hollywood stars not only entertained, but were stationed at Camp Anza. A baseball knee injury kept Private Desi Arnaz at the camp as a trainer and entertainer. His wife, Lucille Ball, was often seen visiting him.
Men, first I want to warn you about talking to strange women in Riverside. Don't talk to any of them, especially don't talk to any strange women in the Mission Inn. That's my territory.
Camp Anza was not only home to GIs coming and going from the Pacific Rim. As the camp grew into a community, hundreds of civilian employees were required to keep Camp Anza running smoothly. Civilian employees could be found working at Camp Anza's post office, chapel, mess halls, kitchens, hospital, fire station, and the largest military laundry facility in the West. Civilians were also invited to Camp Anza for other purposes, such as dances. Local young ladies served as dance partners for the young soldiers. The couples were backed by excellent dance bands led by top Hollywood musicians.
My job was in civilian personnel in headquarters on Philbin Street.
Along the way, Camp Anza saw its fair share of young soldiers and civilian female employees tie the knot at the local chapel. One such couple was Lieutenant Fred Woodard and Louise Simmons.
These two young men had come in from Texas, and they were in San Francisco. They were both training officers with the infantry, and Muriel and I were privileged to check them in. And as these two handsome young men came in, they stood out from the crowd. And so I said to Muriel, I said, I'll take that one.
Camp Anza also hosted POWs who served as staff members during the huge influx of returning soldiers. Upon the surrender of Italy, Italian prisoners took an oath, formed Italian service units, and were shipped to various camps all over the U.S., including Camp Anza. These ISUs served in several positions in the camp and were allowed to leave camp when accompanied by an American officer. Some later settled in the area. One former Anza ISU was Federico Ferrari. A master painter, Ferrari painted several intricate masterpieces for Camp Anza, including several paintings for the Officers Club.
His work was very highly regarded, and in addition to doing his portraits, the Army commissioned him to paint a Hawaiian theme tropical lounge in the Officers Club. It was quite ornate. In addition, he painted a very large Transportation Corps mural that also hung in the Officers Club.
World War II ended on September 2nd, 1945. It wasn't long before Camp Anza ushered in its final battalions of returning soldiers, and the need for the camp dwindled. By the time the last returning soldier was processed at the camp on February 27, 1946, a total of 625,347 soldiers had passed through. In March 1946, Camp Anza was decommissioned. The War Assets Department placed the property up for auction, and in August 1947 accepted a high bid of $510,000 by Edward F. Schultz. Driving through the old Camp Anza neighborhood today, the familiar silhouettes of barracks can still be seen. In addition to converted barracks, a few buildings remain intact, including the Officers Club, the chapel, and the laundry facility. In 2011, the Riverside City Council committed funds to refurbish Camp Anza's Officers Club.
I didn't know a whole lot about officers, but I did know that the pretty girls all went to the Officers Club. So where we had a chance, we'd try to sneak over and peek in the windows.
The former Officers Club and longtime Moose Lodge will be renovated, and the history of this once active staging camp will be preserved for the enjoyment and education of future generations.
Seriously, though, it's from a neighboring camp, March Field, right here in Riverside, that we started playing exclusively to service audiences. And I want to thank the War Department and everybody who's helped give us the swell feeling you get from hitting the 4th straight year of playing camps at home and overseas. Here's the way all of us look at it. Each week, thousands of American boys are finishing their training at stations in the United States. And it's so long American, the next thing you know, they're out there digging foxholes, feeling out Japanese patrol, bulldozing a captured airstrip, or calling signals on a team of tanks. And as long as fellas like these have their jobs cut out for them, we like to feel that ours is cut out for us, too.